Not having watched a Sussex Performance and Accountability meeting since I uploaded Sussex Police Puffers, I thought I'd take a look at the September 2021 meeting in the light of what I had read in a 28-page booklet I reviewed in a video called Sussex Police and Crime Plan. Pages 6 and 7 of the booklet I found disturbing. They give the Commissioner's explanation of the roles and responsibilities of the Police and Crime Commissioner, the Chief Constable, and the Police and Crime Panel. The column on the right is about complaints. I suffered from having several complaints about illegal Sussex Police actions, unrecorded or labelled unsubstantiated, except for one. After being locked in a cell and interviewed, by law I had a right to copies of the cassette recordings as soon as practicable. The tapes contained evidence that inconvenient text had been omitted from the transcript that I had received. The Professional Standards Department of Sussex Police told me that they only give tapes to solicitors. I wrote to the Chief Constable. A subordinate's reply contained another refusal. I wrote to Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary about the illegal actions of Sussex Police. I received the tapes more than a year after my arrest. Consequently, I am interested in the Commissioner's plans for dealing with complaints about the police. I've replaced the white text to improve the definition. Bottom left, the Commissioner claims that the Act protects the operational independence of the police by making it clear that the Chief Constable retains direction and control of all officers and staff. Bottom right, he or she also has to consider and investigate any complaints or conduct matters against police officers and staff, and on operational or policy matters. Top right, the Commissioner herself only has to consider and investigate any complaints or conduct matters against the Chief Constable of Sussex Police, where he has been personally and directly involved. How does the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act start its explanation of the responsibilities of a Police and Crime Commissioner? The Police and Crime Commissioner for a police area must A. Secure the maintenance of the police force for that area, and B. Secure that the police force is efficient and effective. And paragraph 7 says, the Police and Crime Commissioner for a police area must hold the relevant Chief Constable to account for the exercise of A. the functions of the Chief Constable, and B. the functions of persons under the direction and control of the Chief Constable. The elected councillors on the Sussex Police and Crime Panel should demand that the Commissioner quote anything in the Act which supports her claim about the Chief Constable's independence and her own extraordinarily limited responsibilities. The panel is not the critical friend that the Commissioner wishes to see it as, but part of a system of checks and balances. They should be holding the Commissioner to account for what she says and does. I would not rely on so-called independent members of the panel. The meeting starts with the participants introducing themselves. The in-focus background is distracting and inappropriate. The largest words are inept for a transmission that is available live and recorded, using images and audio. And why is the lettering for the Commissioner so much larger than that for Sussex Police? This is the agenda for the meeting. The first item is about investment because the Commissioner and the Deputy Chief Constable both pretend that what taxpayers pay for the police is an investment, though taxpayers have no chance of selling their investments at a later date.
Welcome to our Performance and Accountability meeting on the 17th of September 2021. I'm Katie Bourne, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Sussex, and we have some newer faces today. So opposite me I have...
Good afternoon, Julia Chapman, the Deputy Chief Constable for Sussex Police.
Good afternoon, Fiona McPherson, Temporary Assistant Chief Constable for Surrey and Sussex Police Specialist Crime Command.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and Ian McCulloch, Chief Finance Officer for the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Wonderful. So welcome, and welcome to you as well, particularly across Surrey and Sussex. It's not often we get a joint officer in, so it's quite a treat today. So I think we'll crack on because we've got quite a lot to cover off.
Anyone still watching probably expected to see some of the meeting and judge it for themselves. So I'm ending with clips of the start of each agenda item without commenting on them myself, after reminding you of what the relevant Act of Parliament says about accountability. The Police and Crime Commissioner for a police area must hold the relevant Chief Constable to account for the exercise of A. the functions of the Chief Constable, and B. the functions of persons under the direction and control of the Chief Constable.
First up here, I've got around investment areas following the precept increase from last year. So we've got the additional increase means that by 2023, there will be 250 more police officers, 100 additional PCSOs and 50 more specialist police staff than there were in March 2018, which is an increase of 400. I just kind of wanted a bit of a progress update on how that recruitment is going, if possible.
Thank you. Yes. So as you can imagine, the force is really appreciative of the additional investment provided by the precept to enable us to invest in policing. And some of the funding has been, particularly this year, has been allocated to invest in technology as well as resources, because we really want to respond to how crime is changing in society. So if I focus on this year in particular, just so we know where the funds are going, any additional funds that we create through the precept are created with existing experienced and specialist staff who are then backfilled with new recruits. So we do the stage recruitment throughout the year, because actually for a new recruit it can take at least 12 months for them to do their initial training, they do coaching on the divisions and achieve their independent patrol status. So that does take, it means a little while before we can really get the benefit of the new staff. So from this year, we're introducing 4 additional police constables into the rural crime team, and they start in October. We've got a new public engagement tool, which is just in the finalisation of being procured, which will help our neighbourhoods and online presence, which we're really looking forward to. We're improving our investigative capacity, and we've enhanced our specialist investigative police staff. So we've got an additional 15 at the moment police staff investigator posts, and in the next few months we've got another 25 that we're looking to fill, which will support our police officer detectives as well. And we've maintained our investment in additional statement takers to also support our investigators with the complex nature of crime investigation. We've also maintained our additional capacity in the 4th contact centre, because, as you're aware, it's really important to us to maintain our 999 and 101 performance, particularly during the pandemic, and then as we get back to normal demand, which is what we're seeing now. We're also recruiting an experienced team to create a new digital investigation support unit, which is going live in the autumn, and that is across Surrey and Sussex. It's a joint unit, actually led by Fiona. And that's a dedicated unit consisting of digital media investigators and advanced practitioners in internet intelligence and investigation. How many? So we've got 5 officers and 3 police staff. Okay.
Yep, neighbourhood policing. my office has done a lot of online focus groups around all the towns and parishes throughout Sussex, talking about police engagement and neighbourhood policing and issues and so on. And there's been a really good quality of information fed back, which obviously we've shared with the force. I think the 71 councils that we've spoken to involve about 30% of all the towns and parishes, so it's a good statistically significant sample. Neighbourhood policing teams in Sussex, how do they function and how do they engage with local communities?
Thank you. So we were really grateful to see the feedback that you've gathered from your team. It was really useful to us and largely really positive as well, which was good to see. So firstly, it's probably worth saying that we've adopted the College of Policing neighbourhood policing guidelines that came out in 2018, and we work to those. So they look at making sure there's a flow of community intelligence, which covers a lot of issues from neighbourhood local issues to national security, promotes community safety and feelings of safety, prevention of crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour, protects the vulnerable people and reduces repeat demands, the opportunity to create resilient communities who are less reliant on police intervention, and to ensure the legitimacy which is necessary for us to police by consent. So they're the kind of guidelines that we work to.
So we come on to fraud. Okay. So I read a statistic recently that said that 37% of all reported crime nationally is fraud. That is staggering. So last month we had the inspectorate who did their review of fraud, Time to Choose, which quoted, and I state, a quote here, too many victims of fraud are still receiving a poor service from the police and are denied justice. And I've got a copy of the report here anyway, but any reflections on the findings? Start with the easy one.
Yes, thank you. You know, the report both in 2018 when it was first issued and then the review that's come out more recently has really helped us to kind of focus and test our plans and how we work in relation to fraud. You know, we recognise the impact that fraud has on victims is immense. It's devastating in some cases. We're losing life savings or, you know, effect on businesses and individuals alike. In Sussex, we've seen the levels of fraud start to return to pre-pandemic levels, and that's just to highlight that during the pandemic, over the last 18 months, there was quite an increase in fraud. As you would appreciate, people at home more, doing more online, and also the sort of criminal elements, not being able to commit crime and be, you know, gain from that in the way that was the norm to them. So there was quite a change in behaviours in both senses. It is returning to pre-pandemic levels, but that's still, you know, higher than anybody would like in something.
Now we move on to stalking. Goodness me, it was interesting. I've written a letter back to somebody who was inquiring about, well, they were asking for some advice and guidance and bits and pieces around Sussex. It says here, in Sussex we found there was a 1,149% increase in reports of stalking and harassment made between 2015 and 2020. That's phenomenal, actually. Because I remember back in the early days, I think we had, well, it was less than 100 reports in a year. And now there's like, where are we? The 2,500 stalking crimes recorded across the rolling year period to the 30th of June this year. So that's an increase of 15% compared to crimes recorded in the same period a year earlier. Probably something to do with the pandemic, I would have thought, and people being indoors, as Fiona's just said. So stalking protection orders, the civil orders that can be applied to prohibit the perpetrator from doing anything described or require them to do anything described in the order, like go and attend drug treatment or rehabilitation course. Sussex Police, fantastic, secured the first SPO in England and Wales when they were introduced back in January of 2020. In fact, I think you got 2 within 48 hours. It was really impressive. How many SPOs have been applied for and secured in Sussex since then?
Thank you. And I think one of the reasons just for the increase since 2015 is greater awareness of firstly people reporting stalking behaviours and also for policing to recognise it, identify it and crime it appropriately. So I think that's partly why we've seen that significant increase. And, you know, we were delighted when the stalking protection orders came in. So We've actually had 62 applications and secured 38 stalking protection orders since they were introduced in January 2020. So that's 28 full stalking protection orders, 10 interim orders in place, which means that they're in place awaiting a final hearing. And then we've got 5 cases currently awaiting a court listing, which doesn't mean there's a backlog, it's just that it takes 2 to 4 weeks to actually schedule them. So they're in those parameters. We actually have more stalking protection orders than any other force outside of London.
Yeah. So, yes, which sounds really good, but I think actually if you do it per capita of population, per head of population, we've probably got more than London, because with an 8 million population, they should have a lot more than the 300 odd that they've got. So actually, on a prorated basis, I think Sussex is well out there in a positive way, which is really good. Forensics, final one, I think, for today. Back to you. So forensic science is used by police forces to provide scientific information to support them in the investigation of crimes. It does not look like the Lyle Centre, though. And for those that are on watch it, what's the programme called? Silent Witness, that's the one. And unfortunately, I think too many members of the public think that that is forensics and that they do the investigations of the case as well at the same time, and everything gets tidied up in an hour and a half, if only. Forensic capacity. What changes in demand do you anticipate for the forensic capacity or capability in Sussex?
Thank you. And just to outline at the start, there's 2 kind of broad areas of forensics, generalising massively. It covers both digital forensics and what I would call more traditional forensics. So digital forensics being the evidence that's held within digital devices, phones, laptops, iPads and so on. And then the traditional forensics, which is your kind of fingerprints, DNA, blood analysis and so on. So the area of particular demand and increasing ongoing demand is the area of digital forensics. As we all know, phones 20 years ago were very basic. The change in all technology is huge, and the amount of data that can store. So that's where our challenges are, because the amount of data that's stored then leads into the amount of data that we could potentially examine, getting that balance right between the privacy that we should be affording victims and witnesses quite rightly, whilst at the same time being able to interrogate devices properly and in a sort of evidentially accredited manner. So that's where the key challenges are at the moment within the world of forensics. It's a national challenge, and within Surrey and Sussex we've got a joint programme of work to address that over the next couple of years to make quite significant progress in that area.